When I was in college and when I was serving in a campus Christian student organization, there were many things that we used to talk about, but there was one hot topic that would always come up every year whenever people gathered, and that would be what we do about and with the students' social life. You go to college, right? You are in high school and you go to college and you want to do things that college students are supposed to do, such as studying very hard. You want to do that too, but other things that people really, got themselves into, like drinking, going to parties, like frat parties, like going crazy, and getting wasted, and going on a date and whatever, going to the clubs, going out at night with friends, all those things, the social life that the college students wanted to have. So many of them have no problem going out doing that. But once you kind of come into a Christian clubs, Christian student organization on campus, you kind of tell others, you're labeling yourself as a Christian. And especially when you are, so you end up in those Christian student clubs somehow. And there are leaders like who serve as Bible study leaders, small group leaders, presidents, and many functions. But they are students too. They are 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds who want to do those things. So there are always the debates. Can we go out drink? Can we date? Can we go to the club? And things like that. People would ask those questions. So there were more of a conservative party, right, as always, and there was a more liberal people about that. So people who were more open about that would, they would lead Bible studies and prayer meetings, but they still go out and have a beer or two on occasion. And some people who were on the extreme side, they would not go near any drinking place or near any party place. So there were people who were doing all those things. Interesting thing was that whatever they did, we got criticized anyway by other people. So if you go on the conservative side or on the non-drinking, non-partying side, and you go to church and you come to the worship service on campus and things like that, if you lead a life as total abstinence as a student, college students, people would see them basically as a loser. Like you don't know how to enjoy life, or antisocial, and you're missing out, all those things. And then on the other hand, if you are more open about that, and then you go out and enjoy people, join the parties, and have a drink or two, go on date and things like that, enjoy life, then people would also point fingers at them and say, oh, look at them, they are Christians, they are known as Christians, and they are still doing those things. So either way, people were saying different things about people. So it seemed that there was no solution about that. Okay? So we are living in a time such that whatever we do as Christians or as a person will only lead us to criticism. Whatever we do, whatever we choose to do, something will be too progressive, something will be too liberal, too much, too little, or too religious, or too earthly, right? Too fashionable, too old-fashioned, right? So there seems to be rules about the right thing to do, right? The right amount of things that you should take in order to be the perfect person that is accepted and recognized by the society. And that seems to be happening in the time of Jesus as well here in this passage, right? So in the first part of the passage that we read, it's rather a very strange comment that Jesus is making. What is Jesus saying? If you remember, it's kind of hard to take in when you first read it. So Jesus said, what he said is, to what should I compare this generation? They are like children sitting in the marketplace, saying, "We played flute for you, but you did not dance. And we wailed, but you did not mourn." So what is Jesus saying about this? Right? Or what does he mean by his comments? That this generation is like that. So basically it means whatever you do, if you do not fall into, or you do not follow the rules, the exact rules that someone prescribed, then you will be criticized, and then you will be considered non-conforming or non-compliant or unworthy. In this time of Jesus, 2,000 years ago, that society, the Jewish community, it's driven by religious practices, religious laws, like Jewish laws. Those were the main driver, the standard of the society. So Jesus is talking about here people who have very strict rules, the religious rules, like you have to follow certain things, and saying, if you deviate from that, they are criticizing you. They're calling you. You are no good. And he's giving an example here too. Following verses are, when John the Baptist came. John the Baptist is a person, a prophet who lived at the same time as Jesus did, but it came about 6 months before Jesus did, and he was preparing the way for the Savior, for Jesus to do his ministry. That's John the Baptist. But John the Baptist came and he lived a very secluded life. He had his disciples, but he went out to the desert. He lived alone. He didn't have adequate means to life. And the Bible tells us that John the Baptist made his own clothes from camel hair, and that he was living on locusts and honey. Well, he was living a life of extreme abstinence. Like he didn't do anything, he didn't party, he didn't eat, he didn't have family. So that when John the Baptist came and did it, people were saying, "Oh, he's crazy. He is demon possessed." That's what people called him. And then Jesus came, and what did he do? He ate. And he sat with his disciples, with the tax collectors or whatever, whoever who he found, he sat and ate. He even drank wine. Right? So he was seen as, living the community life. And then people called Jesus, "Oh, here's a glutton and drunkard." It's such a playboy. Basically, that's what people were saying. So John the Baptist, Jesus, whatever they were doing, these people, the religious leaders of the society, they did not like these two, although they were very different. And whatever they did, they would criticize and they would blame John the Baptist and Jesus. And John the Baptist and Jesus were very high-profile figures in this period of time. They were very famous, and they were prophets, people. They had disciples, people following them around. But these strict rules, these standards, these judgments, they were also applied to ordinary people. So these people, these Jewish people living, the religious rules, they had many rules, very strict rules that dictated everything about your life, basically. What you eat, when you work, when you rest, what you do. Everything. There were specific rules to follow. So ordinary people, who were just busy trying to make their ends meet, trying to survive, trying to just eat, right? It's very difficult for them to follow these rules made by someone else, right? These people who had a lot of time reading the laws because they did not have to work so hard. So made by someone else and imposed upon them. If they deviated, they could not keep those laws, they were labeled, they were called unholy, unclean, unworthy. Right? These religious rules, yes, they do come from Old Testament. They do have source in the Bible from the time of Moses, right? Leviticus and Deuteronomy. There were rules prescribed, but there were more, and then there were rules created just for the sake of the rules, and without regards to human needs, to reality, to love, justice, and mercy and faith, without regards to those. So these people, these Jewish people in the community, they were trying to live by these rules, and it was very, very difficult, very restraining. Right? It was a means to constrain them. And this is the burden, the specific kind of burden that Jesus is talking about in this passage, based on the flow and content of the passage that we read. The burden and the pressure that comes from the rules that people have made, that people have produced and imposed upon other people to judge them, to evaluate them, for the purpose of what? Why would you do that to other people? Because you have power. Because your power came from those rules and you want to keep it that way. That's why people created, added upon, and then they watched you, and then they judged you, and pointing fingers at you if you fail to follow those rules 100%. And by making people feel that they are unworthy when they were not able to keep up with the laws. That's how the leaders kept them down. So that they will be just there as a second-class citizen forever. And they will enjoy the status quo. So that was what was happening 2,000 years ago when Jesus was living. And let's turn our clocks to 2,000 years later, in 2014, and see if it's any different today. Now, Jesus was talking about that burden that I just described to you. And I want you to stop now and think to yourself, what is your greatest burden in your heart? What is your greatest burden to you? In 2014, at this very moment, where you are. I don't think there is much difference than what we see in the community of Jesus 2,000 years ago. And your greatest burden, your greatest concern today, let me guess, getting a good job, a secure job, getting an advanced degree from school, getting promoted at where you are, getting good grades at school, maybe finding a qualified spouse, making a lot of money, buying bigger house, nicer car. Things that people say you are supposed to do at a certain point of your life. And I bet those become the greatest burden to you, greatest concern and yoke around your neck that you are thinking and you cannot run away from. We are living in capitalism. Capitalism meaning by it is dictated by capital, money. And that society, the society we are living now is dictated by capital and people with capital. And those rules are being reinforced by making those people without capital feel that they are unworthy. That's how our society is running. That's how our value system is building up. That's how we process value internally in ourselves as well. And when we look at ourselves, we look and find what we don't have according to the standard that the society imposes upon us. And when we find that we are lacking those things, we feel unworthy. We feel burdened that we must have those things. That's how our society is run at this time. At the very bottom of the burden that you are feeling, the very bottom, what is it? What is the source of the pressure? Isn't it the fear that we may be left behind? Isn't it the fear that you will be lesser than your friends, maybe your relatives, your cousins, that you are compared with other people? And you feel that's the precise reason that we are so much focused on the things that that we think we must achieve in the world. And because they are so great burdens upon our heart, the things that we feel like we must achieve in order to become a worthy person in our world, that's the reason that we cannot focus on God. Because that's so great a part of my life, my heart. My first priority, my first burden is to become something. To succeed, to make a lot of money. All those things are occupying my heart. And when they occupy my heart, how can I look to God? How can I follow Jesus? How can I do the things that Jesus is telling us to do? How is that possible? It's not possible. It's not possible. We are so busy just doing and following the path that the society has set for us. We are just following that. And we are calling that success. And what does Jesus say about this? Here in the following verses, Jesus is saying, Jesus is lifting up the infants, the little children. And he's saying, thanking God that what was revealed to the little infants were not known to the wise and the intelligent. He's saying that the wise and intelligent people cannot see, but little children can see. Wise and intelligent meaning here referring to the leaders of the society who were looked up to, were respected, who were probably rich and highly educated, who were leaders and who had the say in what was right, what you were supposed to do, what kind of life you were going to live. Those were the people who was leading the society. But Jesus is saying, those wise and intelligent who think they know what to do, who think what's good for them and bad for them, those people do not know the truth. So what is Jesus doing after he's revealing all this to the people here and also to us? All these burdens in our heart, all these yokes that are occupying our hearts. First, see Jesus inviting people to him. That's the first thing he's doing. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. All those people who are so oppressed by the people who are holding themselves up, like they're in nice clothes and they're praying in the public, they could recite the Bible, they knew all the rules and they were actually following all the rules. And then the lower people, the people who were unholy, unclean, unworthy because they could not do whatever those people were doing. Jesus is saying to those people, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. This is one of the most loved Bible verses, one of the most quoted Bible verses of all time. Sounds very nice, very comforting. But we must not ignore that Jesus does not end there. He is promising us that He will give us rest if we come to Him. But next, He says this, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Okay, so we thought we are just putting off all our burdens and yokes and we're just throwing them away and then we'll be home free. We thought that. But Jesus is saying here, take my yoke. He's giving a new yoke to carry because when we are putting down our own burdens. And Jesus continues saying, my yoke is easy and my burden light. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. So we know very clearly that Jesus is inviting you to come to Him, and He will give you the rest from the burdens that are occupying your heart. But it does not mean that you can be now just carefree and do whatever you want to. Right? Jesus, He said, take my yoke. What is His yoke? That is light, that is easy. His yoke. He is inviting you to the life with Him. Not to the life of ease, but a life of discipleship. That is the yoke that Jesus wants us to take instead of the world, the worldly, the things that concern us. Instead of the rules that were prescribed by other people, by the people who want to control our life, or often ourselves who want to control our own life. Instead of that, Jesus saying, take my yoke. And you immediately know that in order to take this the yoke of Jesus, then you have to put down your worldly yoke, the burden that is occupying your heart. The reason that the church, or coming to the church, or worshiping, or serving in the church is such a heavy burden for you, is that you are trying to top your burden with the church responsibilities and obligations, the perceived additional burden. So you have your world concerns, like you have your school and life and whatever. Those are, okay, we do carry our lives. But when our heart is just occupied, we cannot just run away. We cannot free ourselves from those things. And you try to do something in church, you will not be able to do anything. Because it just adds to your burden. It'll drive you crazy. A normal person just cannot do that. So you come to Jesus and He is calling you, and you have to release. You have to just let Jesus take the burden, the heart. You have to open your heart and answer the invitation of Jesus. And only when you do that, you will be able to take up the lighter yoke, which is a life of discipleship, which is a life of fellowship with the Spirit of God. And you will be able to take that yoke, that burden lightly and joyfully and freely. And that's the life that Jesus is inviting you to. Also know that there is a clear sense of community here. Jesus is calling all those who are weary and heavy laden. They are people like us, like you, who are weary. And Jesus is calling all of them to be with Him, to enter the life with Him, to walk with Him, to take up that joyful burden, that holy burden of discipleship and love and faith and mercy and justice. So, at some point in your faith journey, you come to church, obviously, and most of you are serving the church. If you feel tired, if you feel like it's too heavy for me, heavy burden for you, whatever I'm doing in church, let's look at this passage, what Jesus is saying to you, and look at your heart. What is your greatest burden? For what reason? For what purpose? And isn't it something that some other person has made and built for you, and say that you are supposed to do those things over your joyful life with Jesus Christ? So come, answer to the invitation. And first of all, know what your burden is. Know what you're occupying, what's occupying your heart through prayer. Then I pray that you will be able to rest. really rest your heart in Jesus Christ and walk with Jesus, with the burden, with the yoke of discipleship, because now when you take up the yoke of discipleship and life with Christ, and Jesus Christ is there to carry it for you, and that is why it is light and easy. Let us pray together.